wanted to create a convention that we felt like was truly built from the ground up to be very inclusive of everyone, like make everyone feel like they really belong in the world of fandom, because they do. Everybody deserves a seat at the table and deserves to feel comfortable and safe attending events, and not to be shut out of like networking opportunities and fun stuff to do. So that was the original impetus, and it's been so much fun that we keep doing it, just because it's the number of awesome people that we've met along the way, and just how much everyone, including us, looks forward to that weekend in October every year. It's not that big a stretch to say that sometimes people do go and then come out a little bit changed on the other side of it, at least in terms of their new friends and their new thoughts on things, and like rejuvenated inspiration.
I think the conversations is what Jesse means. When you come out of it and you've had all of these amazing conversations that you don't necessarily get to have in everyday life, people who are smart and funny and usually quite goofy, and it's becoming a family.
One of the great things about Multiverse is it's not a con centered around one idea or one philosophy. It dabbles in many fandoms and many art forms. So tonight, in that spirit, Go Indie Now is going to dabble into something that is very familiar to people who have been to cons and who have been to Multiverse. And that is, we're going to be hosting an actual panel, not unlike you would see if you were in the room attending the Multiverse Convention. And to help us do that tonight, we have two wonderful guests, panelists, if you will. Thom DeSimone, a YouTube and con personality, and Sarah J. Sover, a urban fantasy author and experienced panelist. Along with our host, we're going to do a panel on how to panel, especially at Multiverse, as we turn the spotlight on the Multiverse Convention with your host, Joe Compton.
Hello, everybody. Yes, welcome. We are live, Spotlight on the Multiverse, and we are doing things a little bit differently tonight. And just to give you some sense of what we're doing, we're going to actually be running a panel. And so I thought one of the cool things about Multiverse that you maybe sometimes don't get to see is how the panel gets started and how it works out. So I thought I'd give you a little BTS, a little behind the scenes of that aspect of it. And basically, everybody comes into the room. They know where they're supposed to go. They know what time their panel starts. They sit down, get situated. Everybody writes their name. There's little whiteboards, and everybody writes their name. And then the moderator usually either has already talked to the panelists prior to the panel, or is about to talk to the panelists and tell them about their moderating style, whether it's conversational, whether it's going to be questions and answers. Where the way that the moderator wants to run the panel. And then the track director then gives the signal that the recording is started. That means the mics are hot and live. And so you have to be careful what you say when that happens, but that happens. And then they start recording every panel that goes on at Multiverse. And so then basically it starts with a little something. And I'll bring in my panelists now so that you can see them all.
Hi. Sorry, I was reading this lovely book by an author that I've heard of somewhere before.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that author, too. And I, in fact, read that book. But yeah, so basically what we do is we get a little spiel at the beginning of every panel as a moderator. And it's basically remind the audience. So I'm telling the audience this. I dictate basically what's on the page. And it says, if you'd like to access the live captioning for this panel, in this particular instance, on this night, you can do so on our YouTube channel. It's the little CC button at the very bottom of the feed. So if you see the little CC with a little underline under it, you can click on that, and that'll turn on captions live for you. So if you wanted closed captioning, you can get that every time on one of our shows, but you can especially get that on our panel tonight. Welcome to this panel. We are doing a panel about how to panel and how to moderate, and you will go through a lot of things tonight about paneling and such. Be sure to pick up your paper schedule or check the Gather app for information about Con Suite, the sensory break room, the dealer's room, the art show, award voting, evening activities, and con game. And the con game is a fun way to explore the con, meet new friends, earn chances at prizes, and help determine the theme for next year's convention. The current reigning verse is Dragon. I believe that's still the case. Go to the Play Track or Gaming Hall to sign up and get your game passport. The charity, this year's Multiverse charity, is Found Youth, there's a silent auction inside the dealer's hall with some amazing things that you can bid on. 100% of those proceeds will go to that charity. There's also an online version of that, which is not listed in this thing here. I think that they should add that you can go to right now and bid on things as well. I will put that link in the chat, or I'll put that link in the description. As for that, I am Joe Compton. Welcome to How to Panel. And why don't I have my panelists introduce themselves? I'll start at the very end. So Sarah and then Thom, introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, I am Sarah J. Sover. I'm the author of the Fractured Face series, which includes Fairy God Murder, Fade to Black, and soon Pixie Dusted. I also wrote a comedic fantasy about a group of grog chugging trolls robbing a bridge called Double Crossing the Bridge. And I sometimes write for Writer's Digest magazine whenever they decide that they want to let me.
Nice.
So I'm Thom DeSimone. I'm proof that if you stick around long enough, people give you a job for stuff, and then they give you more and more responsibility, I guess. I work for Dragonmount.com, as my thing says. I do a web show every week on Mondays, and we do live streams for video gaming, and we talk about a lot of Wheel of Time stuff, mostly Wheel of Time. Dragonmount is a 26-year running Wheel of Time fandom. Yeah, 26 years they've been up and running. Official website. They used to be Robert Jordan's official blog when he was still with us. And now we've been dabbling in the content creation genre, and we have our YouTube channel. And this coming Monday, on Monday show, we're doing what we call a rewatch, REWOTCH, because we're so clever. And we're rewatching Fallout right now.
Nice.
And the finale is this Monday. We're going to watch the finale, and then we're taking a break and going to watch a movie in between. So right now on the Dragonmount socials, if you want to come and join us for the new show, you could do that. But we're going to watch the movie, and there's a vote going on right now on what movie to watch.
Awesome. Everybody go do that. So I wanted to start the conversation by asking each of you how you prepare for panels. Is there a preparation involved in when you get your schedule? Do you look at it and go, okay, this is what I'm going to need to do. This is what I'm preparing for. Or is it kind of off the cuff? Do you come in and just kind of riff off of what is going to happen and kind of just go with the flow? How do you prepare yourself to be on a panel?
You want to go first?
Sure. I get made fun of all the time for this very thing. I have to have notes. If I don't have notes, I might go completely blank. And I had before 2019, when my debut novel came out, I had a crippling fear of public speaking. I could not talk in front of anybody without my mouth would do this weird twitch thing, and then I just start thinking about my mouth doing the twitch thing, and then I would end up running out of the room crying. About
you'd never know that now for sure.
50% of the time. Yeah. But once I discovered the convention scene, I was like, I have to be a part of this, and I'm not going to let anxiety stand in my way, as it does in many other ways.
Jesse, what up, Jesse?
So in order to kind of combat that adrenaline rush that makes everything go black and makes me, throw fists and situations, I have to come up with some just bullet points, and I have to think through the questions that might be asked. Not to say that I'm locked into as a panelist. When I'm moderating, that's different. When I moderate, I have, of course, you have to have your list of questions. At Multiverse, I'm moderating 3 panels, and then I'm going to be just a panelist on 2. So there's a little bit of a different approach based on what my role is going to be. I'm a lot more freeform with my notes when I'm just going to be a panelist, because you go with the flow of the conversation, and but I'll put things in bold, like things that I absolutely want to make, points I want to make, and I'll have my pen there and I'll cross them off. And if I look like I'm taking notes on the panel, I'm actually doodling so that I can listen. But I do.
I'm doodling so I can listen. Oh, you're spicy.
All right, see, we're getting all behind the scenes right now.
I love your spicy brain.
How about for you, Thom? How do you usually approach it?
Similar to Sarah, it depends on the panel. I work way better without not like scripting per se, but like, off the cuff. Like if I'm focusing too much on like, something written down, I'll be focusing on that instead of like the conversation or something like that. It depends on how crunchy the panel is, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Like, I mean, most of the panels that we're doing are discussion panels on things that we're passionate about. So it's pretty simple to talk about it if we're learned on it. But if it's something, a little bit more in depth or serious, quote unquote, like if we're talking about like the mechanics of doing something or like writing or blog posting or doing YouTubes or something like that, then maybe I'll have like some bullet points or whatever. But nine times out of 10, I like to pitch it to the audience, because the reason why we're there is to have a discussion that the people in attendance, or if we're streaming, want to take part in. So I like to talk about, like, usually what I say is, we can talk about X topic all day, the panelists that are here, that's why we're here. But, we're here for you guys. So like, what are some things that you'd like to hear about? Here's what we brought to the table. Here's what we're going to talk about. This is what the panel's about. What do you guys think of that? And then I like to play off of the audience of what, what they give back to us, then try to build off that.
I assume this is when you're moderating that you do most of the time.
Yeah.
Are you different as a moderator? Do you do notes for moderating?
Yes. Yeah. I have spreadsheets. I have spreadsheets. I have spreadsheets for everything.
Are they color coded, Thom? Tell me they're color coded.
Yes, they are. Yes, they absolutely are. I know. I'm not like super good with the formulas. I'm pretty good with the formulas, but I have there's formulas and coding and different fonts and bolds in certain areas with the lines and different size with the spacing lines, just so I can see things better and it pops out to me better.
Nice.
Helps with the ADHD and the dyslexia.
I get that.
Nice.
Somebody called me organized the other day because of a spreadsheet I made. I'm like, I am only organized by necessity. Okay.
Yeah, you should see the rest of my life. Like, it looks clean. Like, this camera looks clean, but like outside of the camera view is not. It's not.
If you could climb in my brain, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
You bring up a really good point, Thom, that I think that is which is unique to Multiverse. I think Multiverse, in a lot of respects, on panels that I've been on in the past and panels that I will be on in the future, I think Multiverse has a little bit more of a community feel to it, because it's a little bit more intimate, and there's so many people who know so many people there, and so the conversation takes place a little bit more than question answer. Like we've all been on those panels before. But it is the audience does not fear to get involved at Multiverse. And so as a panelist for you, does that, I mean, obviously you mentioned it already, Thom, but
I love it.
Does that really excite you? Does that kind of, do you like that energy?
Mm-hmm. I feed off of energy. So like, I love when the audience participates, mainly because then I know, like I know what you want now, so I can give it to you. Like that's the part that I like. I understand why stand-up comedians do what they do now. I get it. It's the immediate gratification. Like, you tell a joke, they laugh. They like what you're doing. That's why I like to cook, because then it's like right there. You eat the food, you like it. I like it good. It's the same thing. And like that's why I love the feeding off of the audience. I always like, obviously oftentimes, especially with our conventions, I mean, we're all like that. Sarah said it, like, as extroverted as we appear, there's definitely some recharge time that we need at the end of the day. Rooms, even when the convention's over, it's like, I'm going to crawl into my cave for a week to recharge. But
yeah. And go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was saying, like, we know the people that enter in the audience are similar to that in the fact that they're like introverted and stuff. So sometimes they might not want to get the conversation started. So that's kind of what I like to do as a moderator, is get the conversation started and make them feel comfortable, hopefully get them to start participating in it. Often, though, people are ready to go, at the panels, which is great.
Yeah, I watched one of the more exciting panels I've ever been in the audience for. Not at Multiverse, it was at JordanCon, and that was Sarah J. Silver and Bob Magoo and Sean Hillman talking about
I love Sean.
science fiction shows and things of that nature. And that was a really interactive panel created by Sarah, by the way. Everybody.
She has a beautiful brain. That's why.
But was that kind of a nice energy boost for you, Sarah? Did you enjoy that? Obviously you had some idea that was going to happen in that panel. But...
I always prefer when it's a conversation. Like, I don't like the question and answer, and sometimes you have to do that. Like, if you have a whole lot of panelists as a moderator, you kind of have to assign. I mean, it's even a little bit like that. Just doing the virtual stuff, you kind of have to be like, all right, who's going to talk?
Yeah.
But when it becomes a conversation, it's so much more exciting. One of the most energizing panels I ever did was about neurodivergence and how to, it was on the writer's track of Con Carolinas. And it was how to function as a writer when your brain is a little bit different. And I did not expect the entire room to be filled up for this panel on the writer's track about how to write with neurodivergence. And it was a whole room full of people. And the panelists that I had, 2 of them were not diagnosed, but highly suspected. They knew, they knew, they know yourself better than anybody else does. And then one had been diagnosed with some things, but thought that he had some other things. And it was a full conversation with the audience, because I said straight out, I'm like, okay, I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and ADHD. I have done a lot of research on this other stuff, but I don't know it. We don't know it up here. If you're in this room, if you're at a science fiction fantasy convention, you're probably you're probably have some of these things. And if we say anything wrong, please do not hesitate to jump in. This whole thing was this interactive, and it was as much the audience as the panelists. And one of the panelists actually had a full-on breakthrough, like, on this panel.
Oh, wow.
And it was the most exciting thing ever, because it was just a conversation and everybody was just so in tune with it. Of course, you're always going to get somebody in the audience that wants to monopolize.
Yeah.
And we had that, but like, just being that, and that's just something that you learn the more you moderate, and how to kind of channel away from that. I'm still working on that personally, how to be like, all right, that's enough from you.
I always imagine it as like being a conductor, because you have to kind of like shift it a little, like, this panelist hasn't said anything in a little while. What do you think over there, Tim? Just to shift it. Or, thank you for talking, person in the audience who thinks they're
now
a panelist.
In my head right now, you are Colin Robinson feeding off of energy with the conductors.
I love that show so much. Such a good show. What We Do in the Shadows, by the way, if anyone.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing too, like, panelists can do that as well. Panelists can monopolize time, and as a moderator, you have to kind of control that. So conducting is a good way to look at it. But also, I think there's also kind of a policing that goes on a little bit, and you don't like that. That's the bad term to utilize. But in that respect, you have to kind of, you have to bring everybody involved. They're there for a reason, to talk. So, we want to bring them on. We want to make sure that people get a sense of who they are. And you can always tell who the nervous ones are too. And then you look at your list and you realize very quickly who the talkers are. So as a moderator, you kind of figure all that out and you work your way through it. And I think that's a skill set that I think most moderators need to have in terms of, that aspect of it. I was going to share this story. At DragonCon, I saw the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was a Q&A session with Catherine Tate, and she walked in the room, and what she did, she just kicked off her shoes, and instead of sitting behind that table up on the perch, she got up and walked off the stage and went into the audience and did crowd work for an hour. And like, she was acknowledging all of her fan base. She went and hugged all her special fans, the super fans that were in the front row, and it was amazing to watch that energy. And she started that energy, and that just flowed through the entire thing, and it just made it so much easier to be a part of and be engaged. And I think there's something to be said for that as well, right? To be,
awesome,
get the audience engaged in what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing is to throw the agency back there, because that's the thing, not to sound cliche, but that's what everyone kind of wants the most, to feel like they're a part of the conversation, and to actually make it happen, to make them part of the conversation is even better. So it's especially with someone like Catherine Tate, she's fantastic to do. That can make someone's whole entire convention, and that's great.
Yeah, you remember those moments, right? So, that's you also remember the crappy ones, but that's our own grades. I mean, when you look at it, Thom, what has been one of your favorite panels to be a part of?
Oh man, there's been I've been doing panels for this is JordanCon 16, I think, coming up. So for 16 years now. My wife and I went to the first JordanCon. We didn't know anybody, and we just started helping clean up and stuff. And by JordanCon 2, we were on staff and doing panels and things like that. So, and then I met Sarah at Conjuration, I think, with Darren Bush, another fantastic human being. And he puts me on panels there too. I think so. The series of wizards who go to school that shall not be named. We used to do a thing called sorting panels, where we would take characters from anything. So it would be like sorting Marvel, sorting supernatural characters, and those were so much fun because it was full audience participation. Basically, we would say a character, and then each panelist would pitch an idea. I think they belong here. I think they belong here. I think they belong here. And then the audience would be like, no, that's blah, blah, blah. And then, oh, yay, that's perfect. And then we'd give it 2 minutes of what do you guys think? What are your ideas? And then we'd move to another character, and then we would do votes. And I love the audience participation in that, which is so much fun. Though I think my favorite one, which we've done variations of a few times, were we put characters on trial.
Ooh,
those are fun. Those are really fun. So we'll take characters from books and put them on trial, and then those can be a lot of fun. And the audience kind of works as the judge and the jury a little bit, which is also fun. And sometimes the executioner, in the case of Dumbledore in one of the years at Conjuration.
Thom, have you been on the American Sci-Fi Classics track of DragonCon?
No, I've only done panels at I've only done high fantasy at DragonCon.
You need to be on the American Sci-Fi Classics track as well, because they do brackets where we did Muppet Battle last year, where we did Battle of the Imaginary Bands, and then
that's fantastic. Like bands from things from
bands
property.
from properties. And this year,
did Wild Talons make it on the list?
Yes, everything made it on the list. The audience called out fans, and then we put them on the list.
That's great. See, that's the thing I love. I love that.
It's the most you would have an absolute blast on that track. My favorite thing this time was court. We had to defend some kind of a overrated class or a panned movie from 20 plus years ago, and we were attorneys, and I got to and we get to pick what it was and do the whole presentation. We had PowerPoints and stuff, and we're doing
that's so fun. That's so much
PowerPoint
fun.
Defending Idle Hands, which was I don't know if you know the Devon Sawa channeling Bruce Campbell. I think you would have a blast on that track specifically.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Yeah, no, 100%.
I need to make some introductions.
Definitely, 100%. Yeah, I'm usually on high fantasy. For obvious reasons, I do the high fantasy panel.
Jesse says that in Multiverse first year, the entire plan for Shannon McGuire was guest honor panel was to give Shannon a microphone.
Yeah, that's accurate. I could as someone who has worked with her before, being the wrangler for her for panels and stuff. That is accurate. That is an accurate statement. Just let her go. Anything that comes out of that woman's mouth is gold. So she'll entertain a room for hours.
Have you done the Hill to Die On panel, Sarah, at Multiverse?
I have not. No. So I'm
very
I'm
similar
not,
to that.
Yeah. The problem with that is I'm always like I can't like I'm really bad at criticizing things because I like everything. So I'm not very much fun if you're looking for somebody to, like, be like, I'm gonna go all in on this one little detail or something. I'm not very detail oriented either. So it has to be like a defend something bad. I can do that all day long. Like I can. Gremlins 2 is next for me. Like that's a freaking cinematic masterpiece.
Oh yeah.
But
I would love I'm the same way with like, especially like bad movies. Like I love bad movies. They're my favorite.
Yep. My husband walked in on me watching Piranhaconda one day and he's like, what the hell is this? I'm like, it's awesome.
Oh man. My friends and I used to go to Blockbuster Video when we were kids. Specifically, we would walk to Blockbuster and specifically look for the worst horror movies we could find. We called them horrorables, and then we would watch them, and it was fantastic. Anything with an animal name. So Piranhaconda, that's perfect.
Right. Yes.
But anything that has an octopus, crocodile, like anything that's an animal name is always going to be great.
For the younger generation of crowd out there, Blockbuster was a video store where you get tapes that, and you'd have to rent them and put them in,
I am getting raised in my beard.
Look it up. Just Google it.
There's still one in Alaska. There's still one in Alaska right now.
Have you seen that documentary about the last one?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I enjoyed it. Birdemic recently took over. Jesse says Birdemic recently took over as the absolute worst movie I've ever seen.
Okay, all right. You have you seen Troll 2? That's my only question. If you haven't, then you can't say that about Birdemic. That's all I'm saying. Troll 2 is people. They have an event in Manhattan every year on the day Troll 2 was released originally, and they shut down a street. It's like a whole event to go watch this movie in this big theater, and there's booths, like it's like a little mini convention for like 7 or 8 hours to go watch Troll 2 because it is voted on every year as the worst movie ever made. That's still like entertaining to watch.
That's awesome.
By the way, there's no trolls in Troll 2. 0. Just gonna put that out there.
Well, I literally watched Troll 2 immediately before Birdemic.
Okay. Is I now I gotta watch Birdemic. Now I gotta watch Birdemic. I gotta watch it now.
I've got a double feature night planned.
For sure.
Yeah, Troll 2 is easy to find. Troll 2 is out there everywhere. So
yeah, because it's such a big. It's literally like that's when people that watch movies like that watch indie horror movies, B horror movies, D horror movies. That's the movie that always comes up. So it's actually really easy to find. I think it's all on YouTube. Like you could watch the entire thing on YouTube. I'm pretty sure.
So what happens when somebody comes at you with something that you love that they disagree with you on? Well, how do you handle that as a panelist? Curious.
You want to go? I mean, I'm fine with it as long as it's not toxic. I love talking to people that have different opinions. Like the only thing that I don't like about talking about not liking something is when they say this is bad, or it's the worst thing ever, or when you make declarative statements like that about opinion-based things, that's when I'm like, hey, it's not for you, or you don't like that, that, which is fine. That's a great thing. And then why? Like, what is your thinking for that? Like where did they lose you or whatever? I have no problem talking to people all day about things they don't like. I'm a big fan of the Wheel of Time television show, and I have a live show where we talk about Wheel of Time all the time. So I'm used to that. It's just when it gets when it turns to the toxic side is when I don't like. That's when I just don't engage, or I shut. If it was in a panel in a room, that's when I'd be like, I think we need to get away from that conversation. Like I will shut it. I'll shut it down. I don't like when people get othered, or when people are toxic. I like to say, don't munch on other people's bunch of crunch. Like, let it go.
Nice. How about for you, Sarah?
It doesn't I haven't had a situation where it's really gotten under my skin, I don't think. So it's kind of hard to answer theoretically, but I'm not much fun for people who like to crap on stuff, because I'm just like, I know my taste is terrible. Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like,
I knew there was a reason why I loved you, Sarah, because we are very similar.
Like, I'm fine with it. But a lot of times people who are very critical of things are looking at a lot of the minutia. And because my brain doesn't hold on to that. Like, you're talking about Wheel of Time. I read all of Wheel of Time while I was pregnant with my first daughter, back to back to back to back, all the way through all the books. I can't tell you what happened in which book, and I can't tell you what character did what. I remember the overarching, enjoyability. Like, that's what I remember. Of course, there's some details that do stick, but if you're gonna sit here and be like, well, what about that time when blah blah, and that was inaccurate, I'm gonna be like, okay. And honestly,
Cool.
I mean, yeah, and some of that, do you know Ellie Rain?
Oh.
You know Ellie? Yeah, I think everybody in the con circuit knows Ellie.
I love Ellie. She's one of my favorite. She stayed at my house when she went to Tampa Bay Comic-Con.
Nice. One of the when I first started doing panels, I was in, because Darren Bush helped me really kind of get used to being in front of people and stuff. And so I did a lot with her because she does a lot of panels for him as well. And I really look up to her because, for a couple reasons, but specifically the thing that helped me the most was that she's perfectly happy going, I don't know what you're talking about. And I wasn't. I'm not comfortable with that. So, but like, she's incredibly brilliant. She thinks in all these different ways, but there'll be something that, even if it seems like, and it's something they're trying to trip her up on. That's my worst nightmare, is having somebody trying to trip me up on some kind of minutia that I just cannot, I don't know. So like when Thom was talking about his notes and how he'll write notes about things that are like, what do you say, crunchy?
Yeah, if it's more of a crunchy panel.
The crunchy kind of stuff.
Make bullet points.
I actually write more notes for things that are like my favorite television shows, because I have to write down the names of the characters. Oh, yeah. And the names of the actors and the names of the directors and all this stuff, because I do not retain this stuff at all. I'm just like, remember when the one guy did this? So yeah, so someone who's crapping on stuff is almost always coming from a perspective where they're looking for accuracy, or they're looking for consistency or something like that. And I'm just like, I don't care about that stuff. I care about a good story. So.
I'm sure you've probably had to deal with nonsense of being like a woman in these spaces, and like neckbeard dudes challenging. Oh, really? How to talk about, what about this and what about that?
I haven't. That's like, I mean, I have to up my anxiety pills going to cons because I'm afraid of it. But it's to the point now where like there's enough people that I know that have my back on this stuff in the con circuit that are just gonna be like, she doesn't have to prove anything to you.
No, exactly.
Like, I mean,
the good thing about like a con like Multiverse and like a con like Jordan Con and Conjure, like they're not small. I wouldn't say small conventions. I would say like medium.
They're intimate.
Larger, they're larger small conventions where Dragon Con is 80,000 people, 1,000 people. That's still a lot of people, but it's not a lot of people when you're in a room and when you're in that space. And for the most part, the attendees that are attracted to these conventions are pretty good people. That's not to say that it's not with issues, because I was part of the admin staff for a convention for a very long time. I know there's issues, but there's far less than some places. And also, I think for the most part, the attendees are heavy readers, and they tend to be slightly less problematic than most other conventions that are, more geared toward other things.
Yeah, the worst that I had was actually at this past Dragon Con, which was my first time as an attending pro. At the very first panel that I did. I did 3 panels the year before, but I had actually avoided Dragon Con entirely before that because it's so many people that it was really intimidating to me. And I went because I knew I wouldn't be at first I was like, I'm not going to go until I'm invited as a pro. And then I realized I'm not going to get invited as a pro until I start going and doing panels. Like you kind of have to do it the other way. So I did 3 panels last year. And then this past one, I did like 17 and a half hours of programming.
Nice.
But my very first one was just shout out a classic sci-fi show you remember for the American Sci-Fi Classics track. I am a fantasy author. I tend to lean more fantasy. The sci-fi that I do enjoy is mostly new sci-fi. So like Resident Alien is one of my favorite shows right now. I love that show.
Love Alan Tudyk so much. I love that show too. So good.
So like I'm up to date on a lot of the more current stuff, but this is the American Sci-Fi Classics track. The people in the like I was young in this room and I'm 42. So like and so they're yelling out things from before I was born mostly. And the whole time I knew when I was put on this panel that I was not, geared up for it. I didn't choose it. I didn't ask for it. But I mean, I was like, all right, well, I'll go in there and be like, all right, do I need to watch that? Do I not? And I was trying to do that. I was like, all right, votes. Do I put it on my list or not? And I thought I was being entertaining. And at the end, a guy comes up to me and he goes, I just have to tell you, your input on this panel was invaluable.
Wow. Nice.
And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, like that line about Elf with the cats. Like, I don't know what I've been about that. And I'm like, okay. And I kind of like laughed it off or whatever. But being my first panel going into DragonCon, my first time, I went straight home and I cried in the hotel room.
Oh,
It was awful. Thankfully, there are so many awesome people that I know through cons and stuff that were like, no, screw that guy, and I came back better.
yeah. Well,
every other panel was awesome, but that one was
good. Well, the law of large numbers shows that you're going to run into some of those people, especially. And I'm not shitting on DragonCon or anything. There's just so many people there that the odds are against you a little bit.
It's so big. Well, and I mean, that was the one jerk face the entire time, and everybody else was awesome. And I was, like I said, 17 and a half hours of programming. So like I was around a lot of people and they were all awesome.
Yeah,
and
that's a pretty good.
Like that's annoying. Like,
and every time I ran into you, you were at BarCon, so that's basically where it's at DragonCon for me. So that was
yeah. I had I didn't get a whole lot of BarCon time because I had 10 o'clock panels every night, so I would go before the panel. And then
get lubricated a little bit so you can go to
one night was Fantasy Gather was like 4 hours, and then another one was I did D&D, which was 2 hours, and it was a lot.
You were really fantastic on the Right Track panel that I saw you and Sherilyn and Vanessa was moderating. That was a really good panel, and you were really fantastic on that panel.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah,
Sarah's always fantastic.
Not always.
Well, from an external view, you are.
Okay, sure.
The true test of the metal is when you stay at BarCon way too late and then you have a 10 a.m. panel.
Yeah, that is the true test. You get dragged around until 3 a.m. Jim Nettles.
Every time. It's always Jim.
I told him
a couple of times where I went right.
I would do this
drinking.
Once.
Right.
I told him I would do it
I didn't even
night, and that was it. I would
that's responsible. That's responsible though. That's your staff brain thinking.
Yeah, I mean Multiverse is a lot different because you're in the hotel, the one space, right? So, but for and Jordan Con the same thing, but for Dragon, where you're running around from place to place to place, and then you have to get back to your own hotel. It's like, forget it. I'm going to do that one night, and that will be it. So
yeah.
But I was going to ask you guys about the opposite effect. When you get on a panel and somebody shares something that you value, and you just look at that person and go, "Did we just become best friends?" Yep. How do you feel about that? How's that experience been for you all?
I mean, that's literally how I have like most of my friends. That's how I know Sarah. That's Ellie. Darren is one of those people. Jesse is another one of those people. That's how I met literally like 70% of my friend group.
It's like coming back to cons. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
The sad
I
part
mean, that
is you
happens a
only get
lot
to
more
sit
at
in
the
the
bar than it does on panels, but
Yeah.
there is a moment, and sometimes you get on a
It happens on
panel.
panels. Oh, I remember the first time I saw Kyoko M on a panel.
Oh,
and
I
was
love
like,
her.
she's so brilliant. And I forgot to think about like what my next thing was because I was listening to what she was saying instead of doodling. I should be doodling. But I was like, just like, because she's brilliant. And I was, yeah.
I had the same
We
experience with Violet Meyer, the first Multiverse. I got to see her on a panel, and I was like, "That is wow! That's some impressive paneling right there." You know, I was super, and then I got to be on a panel with, and then I got to see a panel with Toby, and Toby's
Yes.
was that was the neurodivergent panel at Multiverse that I thought was I learned so much about that, and I kind of want to bring that to the conversation too. You know, going to other panels, supporting your friends, if you're just going to support your friends, or you actually want to learn about the subject matter that's happening there, how valuable is that for you as a panelist? Do you find that is a valuable tool to have in your tool bag a little bit to go and see other panels and how other panels interact and kind of, just absorb stuff? Because I contend that's the most important thing in a lot of these things.
Whenever like I straight up, if I go to a panel and I'm like, this was great, like not just the content of the panel, but like the format or like something was cool. And I'm like, I want to do like, I email myself immediately. Like, and I'm stealing this idea. This is fantastic. all the time.
That's the exactly thing. That's the exactly thing that I thought of when Catherine Tate did her thing. I was like, I'm stealing that one of these days.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to do that.
That would be great.
For me to go to a panel that is not interactive, that means I would have to sit still for an hour. And when I am already in with con brain and stuff, I am really truly not capable. Like, I don't know if you've seen me in Author's Alley, but like I give away my chair. Like and I have audio processing issues too. So like that's why I do the sketching. It's not just because I'm, I have to do something kinetic in order to keep going. So if I do go to a panel, it's almost always to support somebody, not because I'm choosing to be there, even if it's like the most helpful panel in the world. And I'm still having to like draw my little things. So I don't do a whole lot of attending panels that I'm not involved with, unless they're no matter, even if I weren't on it, I would always go to the R-rated bedtime stories at Multiverse, which I am on it, but I might have like begged on my forum on my I was like, please, I don't care what else I'm on, but please, because that is just so much fun. For me,
at Multiverse is Monster Mash. Being a part of that audience is so incredible.
That's fun. That was actually probably the only panel that I really have done in recent times, kind of drunk. And I didn't realize I was. And guess whose fault it was?
Jim
Nettles.
Not surprising.
To answer Jay's question, they record all of their panels and they have a YouTube channel and everything, so you can go see some of them. A lot of them, they're all recorded though; they're all audio. So you can get those. Jesse, you might want to tell everybody where you can find it. I think a lot of them are on Discord. You can go to their Discord channel and get a few of them as well. But they do record all their panels, so that's why when they start, they tell you the mic is hot, right? Because they're recording. So, and we tend to sit and talk and, maybe share a little too much in the beginning. Overshare maybe is the right term, but yeah. I mean, do you love the interactive panels? Is that something that you guys get up for? Is like getting up and like stretching and moving around, being able to do that? Is that There you go.
I mean, anything that gets. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like discussion panels and like just sitting and talking about, especially things that we're passionate about.
Yeah,
is great. But like anything that gets us up and moving around and engaging I love engaging with the audience. Like I said, I get why stand-up comedians do what they do. If you talk to someone who's a stand-up comedian, who they are they feed off of the crowd. Like they live and die with that kind of stuff. And I get it. I did improv for a little while, like an improv troupe, and it's the same kind of idea. anything that gets involved with the audience that pulls them into it is fun for me. I love that.
You said my most feared word, improv.
What? Improv? Oh, I love improv, man. Oh, we did a panel at a convention called WattCon, Wheel of Time convention, in Ohio. That was it was basically Whose Line Is It Anyway, but all Wheel of Time themed stuff. So that was a ton of fun, and I was one of the people on the panel. It was so much fun. I love improv. I could do that all day long.
I can go watch that. That I will actually sit down and watch.
Being able to riff off the cup like that is fun. That I could do. Scripting things I can't do. I tried scripting, like even my like my YouTube stuff, even like the lives. Obviously, you can't script, but like our pre-recorded stuff. I tried in the early, like when I first started to try to like script it, and I can't do it because I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just reading the words at that point, and it's not entertaining for anybody. And I usually end up half the time misspeaking and stuttering and things like that. So what I started doing is just making bullet points for myself and kind of riffing and bringing myself back in when I look at my bullet points, and trying to make sure I hit the points that I want to hit. But other than that, I love bringing the audience into it, and anything that gets them feeling like they have agency in what we're doing.
Nice.
Yeah, that's how I do mine. Like I have extensive notes, but I'm not reading any of those notes. I have like things in bold, like words in bold that I want.
Exactly.
Like it's not.
It's not. You wrote it down to put it in there, and then when you see the one word, it pops back up again.
Right. Exactly. It's not. I couldn't script either.
No, do you pick your spots though? Do you look for a spot to say what you wanted, what you bolded a little bit?
No, I go with the flow of the conversation, and if it happens to fit, it fits. I won't use about half to 3/4 of my notes probably.
Yeah, same.
Some panels, I'm like, I'm running down the list because that's just the way the panel is being run, and I'm like, all right, well.
I feel for me, it's not that it's a bad panel, but it's not what I want. If I'm covering everything that I've written down, then it's not like, because it's not organic enough. Then I like it to be a little bit more loosey goosey with the conversation. I like the conversation to actually be organic. Obviously we want to make sure that we are sticking to the topic of the panel. Darren Bush taught me the idea of making, like an imaginary pin in a pin board and being like, that's a panel for another time.
Yeah.
But that's a panel for another time. And then we come back to the conversation if we get too far off of, out into the woods on something.
That said, one of my biggest pet peeves with moderators sometimes is ones who have this very strict view of how this is going to go. Like, I can't stand that. Or when they come in with their own thing, let's see, a lot of times, some conventions will have the person who came up with the panel be the moderator for the panel.
Yeah, and it never works out.
Well, and I'm going to circle back to something but sometimes they have like their own, like they have this like thesis in mind. They really just want this point to be made, and it feels like they're a teacher trying to lead the panelists to say this thing, and it's like, all right, well, I'm here because I have things to say, and I have my own connections that I make, and so I can't stand that. I hate when they're so rigid in their view of what we're supposed to be saying, or they just like ask a question and then monologue. Like, you just answered your own question for like 45 minutes.
Yeah. I feel like that tends to be newer people that have not done paneling before, or people that have not done moderating before, because like, you just don't, you think it's going to be like, it's more like a lecture than it is really like more, it should be more of a conversation.
But as
is that nervousness though, sometimes too, for some people, you think?
Possibly.
Maybe.
Possibly. But as a panelist, I try to like find gaps and fill in and make connections where things are not like. So we had one at Atomicon years ago, and he showed up and he had a very strict, rigid like idea of what was going to happen. He had his notes. He had slides that he put up on like a projector, like for real. And there was only one person in the audience. In which case, if that were me as a moderator, I'm like, all right, this is full on a discussion with this person.
With
like,
this one person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't be up there if it weren't for this person in the audience. And I mean, so, and the other people on the panel were not taking it seriously at all and were like having side conversations. And this guy is getting more and more angry because they're talking. And sometimes they're even bringing the audience guy in like to their conversations. and so I ended up kind of like holding both sides together, like, like
that's rough.
And just kind of filling this gap and like de-escalating him a little bit and trying to get them engaged. So what do you think? Like I'm just kind of taking over moderating here. But like sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to fill in the gap. Like there's times where I'm the studious one when comes from an academic standpoint, and there's times when I'm the comic relief. You know, it depends on who's on the panel. If I'm on a panel with Chuck Gannon, I'm the comic relief. Okay, like
I love Chuck.
I had that happen once. They had me moderating a hard sci-fi, a hard science panel on the science track. I have a degree in biology. I'm like, all right, and it was Chuck Gannon and a couple other people that were. I think Jen Whitworth might have been on there at that point, and she's, she works for NASA, literally a rocket scientist. And I'm like, you know what? I am not a guest who is also a moderator on this panel. I am strictly a moderator on this panel.
Oh, that reminds me of a fun panel that we did at JordanCon one year. All of the panelists were MDs. And the panel was, could that kill you, or something like that.
Cool.
So Sarah Kennedy on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was
actually
forgot her name. There was another. It'll come to me. I'll shout it out in 5 minutes. There were three panelists. They were all MDs. Oh no, 4. Aileron Kong was there. He's also an MD, and they were basically taking like famous scenes from things and like, would that kill you? What would the wound be like if you in this combat from that thing? And like, could that person really have done that thing with this injury? And that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Having people that are experts on stuff like that, as well as being authors talking about things that are in their expertise are fun especially when you marry it into like, the nerddom, like the geekery. We were talking about like Aragorn being stabbed and people having arrows in them in different shows or whatever. I don't remember. It was like 10 years ago, but it was a lot of fun. I remember enjoying that panel a lot.
Our audience has a question. JD Estrada asks, ever had no-show panels? And if so, what do you do?
Oh yeah. So I did. Sarah knows this because I used to handle her all the time. I was guest services at JordanCon for 14 years, and every single year there was, and this is just normal to running an event. You have people cancel at the last minute. It just happens. Stuff comes up. There's emergencies, or people misschedule things. 9 times out of 10, it's usually something has come up that's pressing. But now you have at the last minute to fill panel slots. Thankfully, usually at these things, like, hey, Sarah, do you think you could sit on a panel about, Spider-Man? Oh yeah, sure, why not? Like, oh, I have no idea about sci-fi classics, but I'll sit on this panel for a little while. Like, you can tap. There's people that you can tap that can do that. I feel like you're never gonna, if you're running a convention like this and you have more than 10 panelists for panels, there's gonna be at least 1 or 2 there that'll do it. The only thing that I would tell people is, for sure, if you are ever involved with running a panel, with running multiple panels like this, identify the people that you can depend on like that, and make sure you take care of them very well. Make sure you're very nice to them, and every time if they ask for anything, because like they're invaluable when it comes to stuff like that. Invaluable.
And if nobody shows up in the audience, we just don't have a panel.
Yeah, that's true. If no one shows up in the audience, like, so
That's happened.
Yeah, that is 100% happened.
Mm-hmm.
We had to put paneling together for DreamHack one year. So DreamHack is a big European video gaming convention, and they came to the US, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. And 2 weeks before the convention, asked one of the people that run JordanCon, hey, do you think you could put paneling together? And then he asked me to help him. And they were like, you have 2 weeks. We want to do 24-hour paneling. And we were like, no one's going to a panel to talk about anything at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because they play video games all night. So I was like, we end paneling at 10 o'clock. That's it. Paneling is over at 10 o'clock. So, or the last panel starts at 10 o'clock. And we filled out panels, but it's 2 weeks before a convention that is focused on video gaming. We had a room that could seat like 200 people. 3 people showed up. There was another room on the side that could seat like 60 people. No one showed up for like a couple of panels over the course of 3 days. But you just do what you got to do. When it was like Sarah said, there was the one guy in the one panel. We had maybe 2 or 3 people in one panel. We literally pulled them up to the front of the room, took the chairs off the dais, and sat in a circle and just talked about what the panel topic was. And
That's
because
awesome.
What are you going to do?
I had a panel once where nobody showed up in the audience, and it was a 10 o'clock at night panel. And I was moderating, and one of the panelists was like, can we do the panel anyway? And I was like, no.
It's 10 o'clock.
I'm going to BarCon. You can sit here and talk about nerd parenting if you want. I'm going to BarCon.
Yeah.
I did a similar thing at Multiverse where we had a panel on YouTubers, and it was just 4 YouTubers, and we were talking about how the mics were live. So we were like, well, maybe we should talk a little bit just to feed the mic, just in case they're recording this or something.
Yeah.
So I addressed I said, there's got to be a rat or something running around in here. Let's address it. Let's just name some big people out there and try to address it. But Dennis says hello, and he wants to know, who is your favorite person to have on a panel you're moderating?
I cannot answer that question.
That's tough.
I know so many amazing people. Like,
right.
I mean, half of them are going to be guests at Multiverse.
That's true.
Yeah,
I could tell you who's both simultaneously fun to moderate and extremely frustrating. And Sarah 100% will agree with me. It's not a specific person. It's 2 people when they are together, and that would be Milton Davis and Gerald Coleman. When they are together, oh boy. They're so much fun to listen to, but also like 9 times out of 10, you have to all right, guys, you have to gently nudge them in the right direction.
Yet when I walk into BarCon, guess which table I'm going to?
Oh, exactly. Every single time.
Awesome.
I love the 2 of them. I can't wait to see them.
All right. So to wrap this up a little bit, I wanted to ask you guys what advice you would give to a first-time panelist. What is your favorite sage advice to somebody who's going to do this for the first time?
You have something, Sarah?
Just breathe.
Yeah.
I told you I couldn't talk in front of people. I had actually at Conjuration once, I had a panelist. They have a lot of fan panelists there, and they're not experienced at this at all. And it was me and Vincent Thorne, who can talk about anything. And I know he can talk about anything. And she was so petrified. She was stimming the entire time. She was like on her leg like this. And I said, do you want to introduce yourself? And I was just like, okay, yeah, first we're going to do the introductions. Hey, do you want to introduce yourself? And she goes, no. I was like, okay, we'll come back to you.
That's that.
So, but after a couple questions and I figured out how to get her to open up a little bit, and she was much calmer, and she had a lot of incredible input. I mean, she had great ideas. She was on the panel for a reason. She was very passionate about the topic, and she had lots to say about it, but I had to kind of coax it out of her a little bit. But thankfully, I knew Vincent was over there, and I was like, all right, and I'm going to ask this question, and we'll start with Vincent. And what do you think about that? I don't want to say her name, but and she ended up really opening up by the end of it. And so just breathe and be calm. Everybody in this room, like I said, I haven't had people, I'm chronically afraid of people calling me out for things. I've never had it happen. Like nobody has ever tried to gatekeep or anything or say that I didn't belong there until that last one at Dragon Con, which is different because there's a million people there. It's like 80,000 people there. So you're much more likely to run into something like that. So I would say do the smaller cons, do the mid-level cons. Oh yeah. I didn't know that. But yeah, do the small cons, do the mid-level cons, save the big giant ones for until after you've got, some ability to cope.
Yeah. Whether you've done at least one and you know whether you could do it.
Right. Yeah. Don't jump in the deep end and be like, my first time ever is going to be at Dragon Con. It's a different beast.
Yeah.
And breathe, relax, and know we're all there because we like the same stuff. I mean, like we're all excited to be here. And everybody, oh yeah, but I'm an introvert. Yeah, we all are. Everyone. Like for real. We just fake it really well.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what the exact same thing is what I would say is just basically, we're all, if you're doing a panel on whatever, it doesn't matter what the topic is. If you're doing a panel on a topic and there are people in that room to listen to that panel, they are there for the same reason you are. They like the topic, they're interested in the topic, and they want to hear people talk about it. So just pretend like you're talking to your friends about the topic. I'm sure like you pitched the idea somewhere and had conversation about it. Look at the panelists that are sitting next to you and talk to them at first until you can feel comfortable enough turning back and facing the audience to talk to them. But you're basically just having a conversation about whatever the topic is with a group of people that are like-minded. And that's the bottom line. Once you realize with that part, everything, it's easy. It's really easy.
And a lot of the panelists that you're there with are experienced at this. So if you are super nervous, you can reach out beforehand, reach out and say, hey, I'm really nervous. This is my first time. And I promise we got you.
Yeah. I've never been on a panel where there wasn't at least one or two people. Like, I don't think I've ever been on a panel ever where the other guests were, I've never had an experience where there was like a really negative guest. So like, I could tell you right now from a personal perspective, if someone reached out to me and said that, I would freaking help them at the drop of a hat. Like, no problem. No, don't be afraid to talk to the other panelists 100%. Like there are always going to be people in the room a little bit early. Just tell people. And no, I guarantee people will not have an issue doing like Sarah said she did with that woman at Multiverse, or it was Multiverse, I think you said right now. Conjuration. And it wouldn't be a big problem at all. Like, again, I love helping people to do stuff like that. It's fantastic. Like, especially if by the end of it they're enjoying themselves and participating in the conversation openly, that's perfect.
Can I address what Dennis just said?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Because he was saying it was sometimes it's hard to make sure that everyone has a chance to talk, especially when you have one long talker and one shy person. A lot of times you can see, like if you're paying attention, you can kind of see when your shy person has something that they're really wanting to get out. Yeah. So like if you pay attention to the body language that's happening there, I know I do it all the time. I'm like, yeah. You can see it. But I'm not really shy anymore.
So like the advice that we just said, I think is great for a panelist. If you're doing moderation for the first time, the only caveat to that would be like we were just saying, you just have to don't get lost in the conversation. Like be mindful that you also are running the room. So like pay attention to, I haven't heard Sarah say anything in a little while. Let me, like you said, what do you think about that, Sarah? Like, what, that was an interesting point, Thom. What do you think about that, Sarah? So, like, you be mindful of not getting lost in the conversation. That's the only thing.
Read the room.
Yeah. I remember sitting on a panel where I might have said two things the whole time and they were like a sentence. And I was just, not because I didn't have things to say, but like I had a whole bunch of things to say, but it was just a whole panel of talkers. And I was just, I wasn't moderating that one, obviously. And I was just like,
you did this cool thing. For me, you did this cool thing with the panel I saw you at DragonCon where you leaned in and you pulled the microphone towards you. And as soon as you did that, everybody stopped talking and let you talk. And I think I think you sometimes you have to assert yourself too into the conversation if you can, if you feel like you have something to say. But the moderator should be picking up on those cues too. That's an important role of the moderator. Jesse says, agree that good advice is just conversation about something you already love. Told that to Rob Gilmore before his first panel at Jordan Con, and he killed it all weekend.
He is somebody who really did not hesitate to reach out to his resources and explain to people. I'm terrified. And so we all go into these panels thinking that he's going to be like this wallflower and shy, and oh my god, he killed it all weekend, like for real. He was amazing. Like he had some of the coolest perspectives that I have heard, and I don't know, he so well spoken, and I was like, man, you're better at this than I am. What are you talking about? Like,
I had the same conversation with him. Like I don't know why you thought you needed help.
Right? It's like you need to teach me.
A lot of times, JD's question here, it's not up to us. That's usually if you're a panelist, you've been assigned there, and the amount of people who are there are already determined by whoever's running the track. So
that's true. Yeah. Personally,
it's very hard.
I would say it depends on the panel, only because I've done this, like scheduling for Jordan Con. Like 4 is usually a good number, depending on the panel itself. You know, sometimes a panel will lend itself to more, being able to have more people. But 4 or 5 is a general good number for panelists. When you get too many more than that, especially when a panel is an hour long, there's not enough time for 7 people to have a conversation in an hour.
Yeah, and Dragon Con I've seen panels with Dragon Con where they have 8 people, and it's like, oh, all right. Anyway,
someone's gonna get lost in the mess and that's never fun for people.
Yeah, no, that stinks. But this was awesome, guys. Thank you so much for indulging me and participating. I really love this. And you two are awesome. So why don't we talk about where people can find you and see your stuff. So Thom, why don't you start? Tell everybody where they can check you out at.
Sure. Under my name over here, it says dragonmount.com. So if you go there, you'll find our YouTubes and our social medias. Right now on Mondays, like I said earlier, we do a live stream where we watch television shows. Currently, we're finishing up Fallout. This coming Monday is the season finale of Fallout. And then every time we finish a show, we do a vote on our social media on what show we're going to watch next. So that's going to be coming up soon. Each week we have a different guest. I've had Sarah on before as a guest. I've had Ellie on before as a guest. I've had Darren Bush on before as a guest, and Kyoko M on before. So every week we'll have a different person. It could be an author, it could be an actor. We've had actors on before, other YouTube personalities, professional cosplayers. They usually have some sort of. I try to schedule it so that the guest has some sort of reason for being there for that episode. You know, like our cosplayer was there when there was during one episode of the Wheel of Time where they had a big party and like everyone was in these gorgeous costumes. So we talked about the costumes for the entire episode, and that was a lot of fun. So things like that. But then we have on our YouTube channels, you know, I post pre-recorded content, mostly again the Wheel of Time, but we do other things too. Watched Avatar: The Last Airbender a couple of weeks ago, the live action one, and we did reviews on it. And it's like I said, since my theory on live paneling is similar to how I do my streaming, I like to have the chat involved in the conversation and talking about it. So I tend to try to talk about what they're interested in and whether it's the show or the topic of the show when we're watching an episode or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sarah, where can people find you?
SarahJSover.com. That is sober, like sober, but not quite, not silver. Thom is playing Vanna over there. I will be at Multiverse, of course. I'll be in Author's Alley when I'm not on panels. And I'm on Facebook. That's my primary hub right now. I guess I'm just...
And your TikToks are fun. I see your TikToks all the time.
I have TikTok. I also have a newsletter. I'm on TikTok more than I'm on my newsletter, if that says anything.
Yeah. You were doing those when you're waiting in the car line.
Pickup
book
reads,
reviews.
yeah. But then I
was
got sucked into
watching those.
Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm like, I can't just sit here and like every day I got a new. Oh, and this is book 2. Oh god, and this is book 3. And I mean, I think I'd blow out a tire if I tried to put the whole series in my car. But now I'm done with those, so I guess I can get back.
Well, thank you to our audience. You guys were wonderful. And don't forget that Multiverse is coming up in a couple weeks, and we hope to see you there. There's a lot of great things happening at Multiverse, and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time, and enjoy that experience. And hopefully you're on some panels, and we helped you out a little bit tonight. And remember that it's always time to go indie now. And we'll see you again soon, everybody. Bye.